So as we saw in the last video, creating a dictionary is as simple as placing items inside curly braces. And we can separate our items in our dictionary by using a comma, just like we did when we separated items in our list. Now each item has a key and a corresponding value that is expressed as a pair, and we've seen this termed as key-value pair. Now while values can be of any data type and can be repeated, keys must be of an immutable type. So this would include things like strings, numbers, or tuples, for example, and must be unique. So let's run through a few examples. We'll firstly create a dictionary where the keys are integer values. So we can type my_dict as our variable name, and we can set this equal to a set of curly braces. Inside the curly braces, we are going to add two items. The first item is going to have the key 1, and after the key value, we place a colon. We can then specify the value that is associated with the key 1. So for this example, we'll put the string banana. We can then separate our second item from our first item by putting a comma. So we'll put comma, and our second item in the dictionary will have the integer 2. We can then place a colon, and the string value that will be associated with this key will be pair. So in this example, we have a dictionary with two items. The first item has a key of 1 with the value banana. The second item has the key 2, and this has an associated value of pair. So keys can be integers, and in this example, our values are strings. Let's now create a second dictionary. So we can call this my_dict_2. And we'll set this equal to a dictionary, so we'll put curly braces, and our first item will have the key apple. Now because this key will be a string, we need to include this in single quotes. We can then put a colon, and we will then associate the value to be the cost of an apple. So we'll put the float 0.49. Once we're happy with this item, we can put a comma, and our second item will have the key guitar. We can then put a colon, and then we'll put the price 4.99. So our second dictionary here is slightly different in that we've utilised string values to represent the keys. Let's show one more example where we mix the keys. So we can put my_dict_3, and we'll set this to an empty dictionary. Our first item will have the key name, and we'll then put a colon, and the value will be Peter. Our second item will have an integer as the key, so we'll put 1. We'll then put a colon, and rather than putting floats, integers or strings as the value, we can utilise lists. So let's add a list as the value, and the list will contain 3 integers, 2, 3 and 4. So each of these dictionaries are valid dictionaries. Now you may remember from the last section we covered the zip function, where we stitched two lists together in which we obtain pairs of values in what are known as tuples. So let's recap. I'm first going to create a variable called names, and I'm going to set this equal to a list, and we'll include Jane, Kim and Sam. We'll then create a variable called ages, and we'll set their ages to be 24, 52 and 32. We can then create a third variable which we'll call names_ages_list, and we'll set this equal to the zip function, in which we'll include names and ages, and as we know this will bring back a zip object. So in order to turn this into a list, we wrap this inside the built-in list function. Now we don't just have to turn this into a list, we have the option to turn it into a dictionary. So we can create a variable called names_ages_dict, And we'll set this equal to the zip function, in which we'll pass in names and ages as arguments. And this time we'll wrap this inside the built-in dict function. So as you can see, if we print out the names_ages_dict variable, we have a dictionary, which has been created by passing in two list objects into the zip function and then converting into a dict object, i.e. a dictionary, by using the built-in dict function. So a dictionary simply contains multiple items separated by a comma, with each item containing a key and a value. The keys must be immutable objects like strings and numbers, and must also be unique. The values can be anything such as single value items like integers or strings, or they can be data structures like lists, tuples, or even other dictionaries. Practice creating your own dictionaries so you're comfortable with the syntax. You need curly braces to define the dictionary, you need to separate each item with a comma, and each item needs a key-value pair which is separated by a colon.